All right. So thank you for coming to see our summer sock club this month. This month's pattern is called the Radical Slope Socks. I'm the one that designed it, so we figured I'd be the good one to talk about it since I can talk about what inspired the design, the different stitches I use, that kind of stuff. We'll go over some tips and tricks, other kind of suggestions on how to modify the sock to fit your foot, that kind of thing. We are recording this as well, so if you need to come back later and re-watch it, it'll be available for that. We'll send out the link for that once it's been uploaded for that. I think all of you should have your patterns now. If you didn't get your pattern in the email, just let me know. But I think we got it all out and everything should be good. So the Radical Slope socks are inspired by my childhood windbreaker. I don't know if it was an 80s or a 90s windbreaker that I had. But I wore it all the time camping and all throughout my summer adventures as a kid. And so I just have a very distinct memory of the color scheme of it, which is what the original color scheme for these socks are. The lovely purple, teal, hot pink, all good things. So that is what kind of gave me that idea. Very similar colors. A lot of the kits that we made also are inspired by some windbreakers that I was able to find pictures for. So it's kind of fun if you go on the website and look at the kits. I actually have put in the corner the windbreaker that inspired the color scheme. So depending on what color kit you picked, you might have one from there. If you're using your own yarns, it's kind of that kind of pattern that you can mix and match, use scraps, kind of do whatever you want. Yeah, let's see. I've got the pattern here. We'll kind of go over it. Just kind of an overview. Let me get swapped to this other camera. I can get out of this. I don't need that. Okay, where is the thingy? I always have to find where the thingy is. There it is. Okie dokie. Come on. What are you doing, camera? What the heck? What are you even pointed at? I don't even know what it's pointed at. What the heck? This was 5 seconds ago when I was with Caroline. That's so weird. Okay, give me a second. It wouldn't be a Zoom class if something didn't go wrong, honestly. Let's be real for this. It's that camera, so why is it pointed at the wall? Come on, dude. You were right. Alright, please hold. Check. Let me just turn this on for a second.
If you minimize Zoom and go into the camera software, you should be able to reset it. And
Yeah,
then remember to take the view off of the camera software. So
that's so weird. There we go. Yes, okay. All right. And am I pinned so everyone can see it? I want to make sure that I'm big for everyone. Okay, perfect. I am not big for myself, though, so that's weird. There we go. Okay, so thank you for bearing with us. All right, so Radical Slopes pattern. It's your typical kind of top-down sock. We start with a twisted rib on the top. I believe it's about an inch and a half. You can kind of add to the ribbing however you'd like. I know there was a couple of our test knitters that made the ribbing a little bit taller just because they prefer the taller ribbing. So that part can totally be modified. Just be aware that if you're modifying the ribbing or making the heel longer, anything like that, that is going to change the required yarn. So just make sure you have extras if you plan on modifying anything. The twisted rib I picked because I like the way it looks. I like that it gives a nice clean ribbing. I find it doesn't stretch out on my foot as much. I have a lot of issues I find with some 2x1, 1x1 ribbings will stretch out quite a bit once I've worn it and don't always like to go back to its original shape. So I find this holds its shape really nice. That's why I picked it. And then the cast on that it does talk about using is just a typical long tail cast on. You can use your preferred stretchy cast on. I know some people like the twisted German cast on, but you can use whichever is your preference. I will show you the twisted German cast on compared to the long tail cast on quickly, just because they're similar. They have the same kind of look, but some people I know think that the twisted German cast on adds just a little bit more stretch. So again, it's personal preference, but you can kind of pick and choose which one you would prefer to use. So the long tail cast on, you will have your long tail, however long you need to make it for your size. I always end up overestimating because nothing is worse than running out when you're like 5 stitches left. So your preferred length is perfect. So the long tail cast on, I always have my tail in the front and the working yarn coming off the back of the loop. You end up wrapping the yarn kind of around your thumb. Center myself a little bit better. Wrapping around my thumb, and then I grab the back working yarn with my pointer. I know there's some people that also hold their yarn differently. This was just how I learned how to do long tail cast on. So if you hold your yarn differently, don't worry. But ultimately, the steps are kind of all the same. So you hold it. You've got this tail wrapped around your thumb, the working yarn hooked on your pointer finger. And then you go under the kind of, I guess, the front leg of that loop on your thumb, under, and then up through the loop. Grab the working yarn that's being kind of held by your pointer finger and pull it down out of that loop, and then let go and kind of pull snug. You don't want to pull too snug because that will kind of affect the stretchiness of your sock, but snug enough that it's not going to, fall off on there. So again, I'm going to move my hands a little bit closer just because the camera is a little bit further away. So yarn wrapped around my thumb, grab by the pointer, and go under this leg and up through that kind of loop that's made around the thumb. Grab the working yarn, pull it back under that loop, and then let go of the yarn, that's on your thumb. And that can happen sometimes where it'll loop back around onto the needle. You'll want to take that off because what this is actually ends up being is I just lost my brain, backwards loop cast on, and that is not stretchy. So you want to take that off and make sure it's not hiding there. What you really want to make sure is that on these stitches, you kind of get like a braid on the bottom, and that is those extra wraps that help it kind of add stretchiness. The twisted German cast on, if you haven't done it before, is also a long tail cast on, but there is an added kind of loop or wrap in there, and that adds a bit extra yarn, which adds to the stretch. So you kind of start off the same way as you would with your long tail cast on. But the difference being, now I got to remember because it's always muscle memory with this guy. So instead of going under just one leg, you go under both, dip into the loop, grab the working yarn then, and you kind of end up getting like this kind of almost like infinity kind of loop. You're going to bring this working yarn through this part, the one that's closest to your needle, not this one where your thumb is, this, trying to tilt it right there. You bring it down through there and then let go. So it adds, by going under both of these and then through the loop, it adds just an extra kind of twist, loop, whatever you want to call it, into that cast on. But I find, I was looking at it today when I was making sure I could remember how to do it. And ultimately the edging looks very, very similar. I couldn't really see a huge difference between it. So either works. They both have a really nice finished edge, and they both work great for the stretchiness of the sock. In regards to the colors of the sock, I know there was a couple people that I talked to that came into the studio that were wanting to use scraps for these socks. And I think that's a great idea. I kind of want to do a really scrappy version where, like you do every section is different or whatever. You could go really wild and crazy or change this stripe so that it it's the only one that's a different color or something like that. So definitely get creative, have fun, use your leftovers. Just make sure that they do have enough contrast between the colors, because if you don't, you're going to lose some of these slip stitches. You're going to lose some of the, the patterning in there. You could probably use a lightly variegated yarn. I wouldn't go too crazy, just again, because some of the stitches are going to get lost. So just something to be aware of if you're wanting to use your scraps or any leftovers. Let's see. We did have a question of someone that asked about lengthening the cuff, because I know some people might want a little bit longer. Some people want a little bit shorter. It's easy to kind of remove one of these repeats and, change or add a repeat or whatever. You just want to make sure that you keep track of the colors you use, so that, as you get into the foot, you still continue the pattern of the alternating stripes. Is there any questions in the chat? It looks like they were all covered pretty much. Oh, Karin does say if you're using the twisted German, you'd need a longer tail, so that's a good thing to keep in mind. If you're using a twisted German cast on versus a long tail cast on, just always overestimate your yarn, because we don't want to have to rip it all out and then restart it again. So, but it's definitely a good thing. Thanks, Karin, for letting us know about that. So, let us go into the chart of it. It's a 6-stitch repeat for the charts, and then they just alternate to have those offset slip stitches. Let me just find the chart. There it is. So this is the chart that you'll find in your lovely pattern. So you can see here, we've got some rows of knitting, some rows with purls, and then we have our slip stitches in here. One row of the slip stitches is just knits, and then one row does have the purl in between those slip stitches, and that's how you get, there's like a nice little purl bump in there. I found it just kind of highlights those slip stitches a little bit more, kind of pushes them out a little bit more. So that's why that is in there. And I do have, where is my little thing? There it is. I did want to show about slipping stitches, just because I know there was a couple people I talked to that this is like, they're kind of jumping back into sock knitting. And so I wanted to show how you do these slip stitches, just so you can be comfortable doing them if you haven't done them before. With our summer sock club, all of the socks actually for each month do have slip stitches in them. So this is a good sock to kind of prepare you for the future months, and to get you kind of used to using those in your work. The benefit of the slip stitches is that you don't have to work with more than one color every round, but it gives the look of you doing fancy color work. So they're really, really nice, really, really easy to get used to once you kind of get in the rhythm of it. And it makes it look really, really nice. So I only have 2 colors here, so I'll just show you how to do slip stitches with the 2 colors versus all 3 of them. But I've done a couple rows. You can kind of see that right now. So I'm going to be jumping into, I did this and I did this. So we're going to be basically up here, but I'm not changing to a different color. So we'll just pretend that I'm using a 3rd color. But I'm going back to my teal once I get all untangled. Or I guess it's more of a mint green. It's not really a teal. And because I used it here, I'm just carrying it up. Another thing I did on purpose was that for these little kind of stripes, I made sure that they were enough rows that you can carry your colors up and not have to be cutting them every time and have a bajillion ends to weave in. You will still have a lot of ends to weave in, but at least it'll be a little bit better. So I am grabbing that mint green that's coming up through the side, and I will start on doing my knit 3 and then slip 1, knit 1, slip 1. So let's get this all ready. So we're just going to do our knit 3. Actually, I'll knit the other way so that you guys can see, and I'm going to move it up a little bit. Okay. So we do our knit 3. Knit 3. And then we're going to start slipping our stitches. And so for this, it says in the notes about it slipping them knitwise. Where does it say that? Somewhere in the pattern. They're all slipped knitwise. I know it says it somewhere in the pattern. I just can't remember where it is right this second. So you're going to slip it, or no, sorry, I think slipping purlwise with the yarn in the back. So you slip it over. We're going to knit this guy. And then we're going to slip this guy over from the left-hand needle to the right-hand needle. And so now you can see there's our slip stitches. There's the 3 that we knit and the 1 that's knit in between. Now we're going to knit 3 again. 2, 3. And again, we're just going to put our right-hand needle into there and just slip it off the left-hand needle. Knit 1. And then slip 1. And then the last group of 6. So 1, 2, 3. Put your right hand needle, slip, knit. Oops, sorry, I'll tangle with my yarn. Slip, knit, slip. So you can see them there, all nicely ready to go. And so then you continue that way through these charts. So you'll always be slipping purlwise, as I said, with the yarn in the back. And you will get those nice little, I don't know, yeah, some sort of cute design. I liked it. I thought it looked really fun, and it was really not too tricky to get into. Just remember, I guess, that you do have a purl on that second set of slips, and they will alternate accordingly. What was next? Lengthening and shortening the leg, like I said, is a possibility. I know that some people don't like it as tall. Some people might want to do an ankle sock version. So you can just eliminate or add a chart repeat in there. It just might change which color then you'll be doing for the heel and, further on. So just something you would have to keep track of if you did want to modify the pattern, but it's not too difficult to do for sure. I kind of actually want to do an ankle version. I think that would be really fun. I love ankle socks, and it would just be easy enough to start with your ribbing and then just jump into here and then kind of eliminate these 2 at the top. So super, super simple to kind of tweak. The heel flap, I know people have a preference in regards to heel flap lengths depending on the arch of your foot or your general foot shape. If you find that the heel flap for your required size isn't quite as tall as you'd like it, that is easy enough to add a couple rows in to make sure it's just a little bit taller. The only thing you're going to have to make sure that when you go to pick up stitches along the edge of your heel flap, that you then account for those extra rows. So like this sock, I believe I did 16 pairs of the, back and forth for the heel flap. If you needed to do 18, 20, whatever extra, just make sure that instead of only picking up the 16 on the side, you pick up as many as you've added then to the heel flap. So that's very, very easy to tweak if you find that you need that for your own sock. Another thing I'm going to mention once you get to the foot area is that you are only working the patterning, the chart on the top of the foot. Well, we don't have you working it on the bottom just because it's not as comfortable to have the purl bumps and the ridges and everything on the bottom of your feet. Instead, you get a nice little striping pattern. So it'll still follow the colors that you're using, but you're not going to be slipping stitches or anything on the bottom of this foot. Again, lengthening or shortening the foot, same deal as it is with the cuff. Just you can repeat the chart. Just make sure that when you're changing colors, you account for where you are on the foot. And again, if you're going to be adjusting the foot length a lot, just make sure you do have extra yarn to account for that. What was the other thing? Oh, picking up heel stitches. I always like to show that because sometimes it's a little tricky to make sure you're picking up in the right spot. Some people often ask, like, is this where I'm supposed to pick up? I'm not sure. Can you double check? So we always like to go over that in our Zooms just because it's a good reminder. It's a good tip. It helps you kind of make sure that you're not going to get any holes on your sock. Sometimes you will still get a little bit of a hole kind of right here, even doing this. Sometimes you can just pick up an extra one on the side and then knit those ones together, just do an extra decrease. Or if you're lazy like me, just sew it up at the end. I'm all about just sewing the holes instead of having to fiddle with it. People get really stressed about having holes at joints, and I'm just like, just sew it together. It's not that big of a deal. Sorry, I just see a question. Can you let people know? Oh, yes. For the ribbing, you can do, if you would prefer standard ribbing, you can definitely swap that in, or any sort of ribbing you prefer. I think one of our test knitters did a 2x1 ribbing and it looked great. Like, it's totally flexible. I'm all about making the pattern work for you. So, don't be too stressed about, getting it exactly. If you don't like this ribbing, if you prefer some more standard ribbing, 100%, you can happily change that without any issue. Okay, so picking up the stitches on the heel. This is my very tiny little heel flap out of worsted weight yarn, so hopefully you guys can see it really well. I've done my heel turn, so now I am ready to pick up stitches. So I'm going to use a different color because I think that'll help kind of see what's going on a little bit better. Let me just not let this ball roll away from me. I think it'll go over there. Okay, so on the side of your heel flap, we'll have your slipped stitches that you did at the beginning of each of the rows. Both the right side and the wrong side, you start with a slip stitch. So if you can see it's kind of wanting to curl on itself, but if you uncurl it, you can see them kind of right there with all their little V's all down the side. And so those V's are what I pick up for my heel flap stitches. Just give me 1 second. I need a drink of water.
I'm just going to interrupt you, Amanda, and say, for the camera's sake, can you move a little slower so it has a chance to focus?
Oh, sure. Thanks. Struggling. No worries. I can do that. Okay. So you can see those V's there. And I like to pick up underneath both legs of those slip stitches. I find it makes it a little more secure than just picking up one leg. And so that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to use a different needle. Just give me 1 second. Okay, there we go. So I will unroll it and look for my little V's. So you can see that this stitch that's on my needle is coming out of this V. This is where you could pick up an extra one if you're worried about holes or anything. Sometimes I find it's a little too close and I have a hard time manipulating it. So sometimes I won't, sometimes I will. Kind of up to you. But I'm going to go in here just so we can see. So here's that leg. I'm going to put my needle under there. Normally you would be using the yarn that's attached to it, but I'm just going to use a different color so we can see it a little bit better. So we'll pretend that I have wrapped my working yarn around this needle. And then you pull it under and pick it up. I use quite large needles, so there's kind of a pretty big gap there. Usually if you're using your proper needles and everything, you're not going to have a big gap. But picking up under the legs will help it kind of be more secure. So I'll move to the next one. So there's my next right here. Oh, I don't want to wreck my yarn. So I'll pick up under those two. Same deal. Pick up a knit. Oops. And you go all the way down. And so if you did 16 rows, you pick up 16 stitches along each edge. 14 rows, 14 stitches along each edge, but you'll get nice. So you can see there you have the two legs of those stitches and then the new stitches popping out through them. Whereas let's see if I can show you. If you were to only pick up one of these legs, like for example, if you go down, I'm trying to make sure you guys can see. So let's say instead of picking both, I'm going to pick up just one. you can see there how much more it stretches. You get way more of a gap. I find it feels not quite as secure because, again, it's only one strand that is being kind of pulled and used. So if you have the two, you can see the hole is much smaller and much more secure. And it'll look a lot better because you're not using fingering weight yarn to pick up stitches in a worsted weight project. So it'll look better, promise. But I just wanted to make sure that I used a contrasting yarn for you guys so you can really see. Karen also says that she often uses a crochet hook to make sure that they've gone through both legs and then pop it on the needle. So that's a great idea. I actually have a crochet hook. I can show you what Karen is needing. 1 second. Oh, except of course it probably fell out in my bag. Okay, just kidding. It's somewhere in the bottom of my project bag. But yeah, so what Karen is saying is that instead of just using the needle, she uses a crochet hook because then it's easier to make sure you are getting where you need to go and to grab the yarn. Nicole says that they use Addi Duets. That's a great idea too. They've got the hook on one side and the needle on the other, I believe. So that's actually a really great suggestion. I like that idea a lot. And then that way, yeah, you've got it nice and secured, no weird gaps, no weird holes, and that heel will hold on for you forever, basically. It'll be nice and strong. So that is that one. I'm just looking at my agenda. I think we also just wanted to go over the toe briefly. So the toe shaping that I did for this pattern is your typical wedge toe. Let me unfold it. So that is my toe with the decreases on either side. I do know that someone had commented in the store that this decreased down to quite a small amount. If you don't like the toe shaping, you can definitely stop sooner and graft it. If you wanted it a little pointier, you can easily keep going with your decreases and then graft it closed. It's totally up to your own foot shape. I know that my husband specifically prefers doing the is it the star toe, where you have like your decreases evenly kind of dispersed around the whole toe versus just on either side. So it's a very easy thing to do to change this to whatever your foot shape may be, because once you get through the pattern and get to the toe, there's no more slip stitches or anything you have to worry about. You can kind of change the toe shaping to your own preference. This is just the shape I find fits my foot good, but everyone's feet are different. So feel free to adjust for yourself. I will quickly, where is I think there it is. I did want to quickly show the grafting for the toe. I have my very, very tiny little thing on here. These are more stitches than you will have on your toe. I just wanted to make sure I had enough. But I always like showing how to graft the toe closed because a lot of people have questions about it. A lot of people get nervous about it. So we figured we might as well show it. Again, I'm doing it in a contrasting yarn because I know this yarn's kind of dark, but this way you can kind of see better once I have it going on through there to see what's going on. So we're going to pretend again that this is my working yarn, even though I just threaded it in there. The way I start it is, I can't remember the tutorial I saw for this, but they have you start off by not immediately taking things off. It helps kind of, I think, secure the ends a bit better. Because usually when you're grafting, you'll be taking off a stitch and then leaving a stitch on either needle. But the very first stitches, I always do just one kind of through while leaving them on. So the front needle will be a purl. You go in through as if to purl and pull all the way through, but leave it on. And then the back is as if to knit. You go in through as if to knit and pull all the way through and leave it on to begin. And I think it helps kind of stop the little like dog ear kind of look. I've heard some people refer to it as puppy ears on either side of the toe, where you'll kind of get like a little bump. And that's what's worked for me. So then now that I've done through once, I'm going to go through for where I'll take one off and keep one on. So the front needle, I always go in as if to knit and pull through, keep banging that thing, and then remove it, and then go in as if to purl and keep it on. And then the back is going in as if to purl and taking it off. Oops. And then going in as if to knit and keep it on. Oops. And so
I'm sorry, Amanda, again, I'll just remind you to slow down a little bit for the camera.
Yeah, no worries. Just kind of getting all tangled. Once we get further in, it'll look a little bit prettier. You can pull it a little bit tighter. Okay, we'll keep going. So we are now back to the front needle. So we go in as if to knit and pull it off, and then pull your yarn through. Try not to catch tails. And then as if to purl, and you leave on. And then on the back, purl, as if to purl, and take it off. And then knit, as if to knit, and leave it on. And I always kind of like, as I'm doing this, I always am saying in my head to kind of remind me what to do. It's like the front needle is always knit off and then purl on. And then the back is purl off, knit on. It's like my little, I don't know, thing I always have as a way to keep remembering what I'm supposed to be doing, as opposed to, you know, having to do it every time and like every time. But eventually I'm just going to go a little faster so you can see kind of the final, what it'll look like. That. But yeah, you'll get a nice little, you can kind of see now, you can see those stitches once it focuses. You can see where I am grafting it together, where my green yarn is, and it's mimicking those stitches, giving it a nice clean finish. And closing your sock up really nice, while trying not to get tangled. And so yeah, there is that. Sometimes I find out at the end I'll still get like a little, you know, ear thing, but I find it's easy enough to kind of, you know, pull your yarn to the inside of the sock, and then as you're weaving in your ends, it kind of tucks everything in nicely. Karin also does say that the little ears disappear once you wash the sock, which is true. It kind of helps, you know, even everything out, and get everything nice and in the right spot. I think that's all I kind of wanted to cover. If there's any questions, you can feel free to post in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, and Caroline, I'm sure, can spotlight you so you can ask your question. Totally up to you. But yeah, it's a fun little sock pattern, and I really enjoyed writing it. I like sock patterns that have a lot of stuff going on, so that you don't get bored. Because I know sometimes with second sock syndrome and everything. So I always like patterns that keep me interested and are doing kind of different things. But yeah, I don't see any questions as far as I can tell. At which point should be breaking the yarn between colors? So what I did, let me switch cameras back, and hopefully it behaves itself. Nope, it decided to go to the wall again. Come on, guys, what the heck? We can just use this camera. So I usually broke the colors right when I was doing these larger sections. If you feel comfortable carrying the yarn through this section, you can. But yeah, if I turn them inside out, yeah, I didn't even weave my ends in these ones. There you go. Some behind the scenes content as you see that all my ends are still sticking out. So you can see here, I mean, it shows you, I broke my yarn. So that's the start of my teal. And then I had broke my purple. You can see there. So I broke it for the big sections. If you wanted to carry it, you could. I just know some people aren't comfortable carrying. So I didn't worry about that part. Do you have a technique to make jogless stripes? I see what that says, jogless stripes. I haven't tried jogless stripes. I don't know if Caroline might have suggestions as to jogless stripes. I know there's ways of you slip stitches and kind of, there's a way to manipulate the jog, and I haven't actually tried that because I just haven't felt like it. So I don't know. Maybe Caroline has a suggestion. Let's see. We can spotlight her so that you can hear her. This one. There we go.
All right. I'm the amazing echoing woman. A jogless stripe is really easy. If you want to on the first, okay, so you change colors and knit one row. When you get to the first stitch of the second row, pick the right leg of the stitch up in the previous color, put it on the left needle along with the new color, and knit those two together. It will actually smooth the stripe out. And I happen to actually have a sock on the needle right here where I've done that. And so you see it pretty much gets rid of the jog. It's not been blocked yet, so it's not perfectly straight, but that works very well. If you're doing it in the slip stitch sections, twist the colors together on every row in those where you're changing colors, and pull it tight whenever you change color, and that'll actually smooth it out as well.
Okay.
Hopefully that worked with the echo.
I see a heart. I think it did. Okay, let me swap. There we go. Awesome. That was a great suggestion. I know people have asked about it before, and I just honestly haven't done it yet. There's lots of these little techniques, and I'm like, I'll get to it eventually. I'll figure that out. So thank you, Caroline. That's excellent. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I hope that also answers your questions about breaking the yarn. I clearly haven't. I don't weave in my ends a lot for socks. There's my secret. I figure a lot of the time you're not going to see them. And they kind of just end up felting into it, the sock anyways. So I don't weave in ends either. So there you go. All right. Any other questions before we wrap this up? I think we've covered a lot of really good stuff. If you need any help, have any other questions after this, feel free to send us an email. If you're local, you can come into the studio. We're always happy to help. Caroline also does not weave in her ends. So there we go. Even the pros don't bother. Yes. Yeah. Knot them and break. That's pretty much what I do. Cause yeah, they're socks. They'll be fine. Nobody's going to judge you. No one's looking in your socks to see if you have ends sticking out. That's all good. But yeah, so if you need help with these or have any issues, let us know, give us a shout. But, yeah, we can't wait, to see what you guys are